Can you guys see the intro slide? Okay, cool. we're still waiting for Jami to get here, so once she arrives, we'll start the keynote. Okay, Jami is here now, so we can get started with the last event. Okay, so hi everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the conference so far. This is our last event for the night. So if you made it here this far, you're awesome and you made it through a really long day. And so now I would like to welcome the closing keynote given by Dr. Jami Valentine Miller. And so as a reminder, please keep your video on if you have the social capacity right now, and also stay muted until the Q&A time. So it is my honor to introduce our closing keynote speaker, Dr. Jami Valentine Miller. Dr. Jami Valentine Miller is the founder of African American Women in Physics Incorporated, an organization that honors women who paved the way, inspires future physicists, and connects with allies interested in promoting diversity in physics and other STEM fields. She was the first Black woman to earn a PhD in physics from Johns Hopkins University, and she works as a patent examiner at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Please give a warm welcome to Jami.
Hi, everybody. Hannah, are you able to share my slides?
Yes, I am working on that. Let me get you spotlighted so people can see you. I'll take mine away, and then I will pull up your slides. And if you just want to tell me when to move to the next slide, that'll be helpful.
Will do. Can you hear me okay? Excellent, excellent.
Okay, almost ready.
No problem. Had some technical difficulties right at like 5 minutes before I logged in.
That's okay.
But I'm so glad to be here with you all today. Okay, you can go to the next one. As Hannah said, I'm Jami Valentine Miller, and I am a primary patent examiner at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. You can go to the next slide. So just a brief agenda for our talk today. I actually did a little bit of editing, but my slides didn't want to work with me. So these slides are a day old, but they're still really, really good. So we're going to have an introduction, then we'll talk about resilience with some real life examples. And then, sum it up on resilience. I'm going to then go into success, how we define success and how we can be more successful. I'll talk about some strategies. And then if we have time, I have to talk a bit about intellectual property. It's like the most underserved topic for engineers. So I would love to share a little bit of that with you. Next slide. So the dictionary defines resilience as the ability to return to your original size or shape after being conformed or depressed, or the ability to recover from adversity and to change and to easily adjust to adversity. But resilience is really about adapting to difficult situations as they are, rather than like how we wish they would be or how we hope they would be. And so we're going to talk today about ways to improve our resilience. Next slide. So to put it more plainly, it's the ability to overcome all kinds of challenges that will come up in our normal lives. The ability to bounce back stronger, wiser, and more powerful. And I think we can each think of times where we've had something that just knocked us off of our feet, and hopefully we were able to bounce back from it. We also can probably think of times where we had a real struggle being able to bounce back from it. So I'm going to share some examples from my life. Next slide. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to a Votech High School, which, if you don't know, it's a school where you have to have a trade. It is most trades are not college tracked, only 2 were, but we had everything from car repair to computer science, which was my trade. I was really good at math, and I was able to get into some programs for students in Philadelphia who were interested in engineering, and that really helped me to stay focused in when high school can be distracting. But what it also offered me was a community of other students who might also be like that one kid who really is into engineering at their high school. And so I was able to find some friends who were kind of into the things that I was into. But I absolutely needed a scholarship to go to college because I grew up kind of poor. So when I looked at, the majors that were out there, and back then there were far fewer majors than there are now. I think there were only 5 engineering options. And I decided to go with physics because, well, there was fewer people going into physics. So I figured the odds were good that I'd be able to get a scholarship. Um, and I'm gonna, try to talk about resiliency and challenges that I face with each of these life experiences. So I'll tell you, at that high school, even in my neighborhood, I was the only person my age who was still going to high school. Everyone else had pretty much dropped out. And people didn't really expect that students from my school or from my neighborhood would go to college. I remember we had some recruiters come to a college fair, and they were like, well, we just want to talk to the president and the valedictorian. And I was like, well, why don't you want to talk to me? And he said, well, why should we talk to you? And it turned out that I had the highest SAT score in the school for like the past 3 years. But also, I got a C in SAT English. So it's like, I'm doing well in one way, and in the other way, I'm kind of just floundering. It was also a challenge to attend that school because Philadelphia high schools are not well funded. Well, hopefully they're better funded now. But when I was there, we did not have heat in the school for the 4 years that I was there. We also didn't have like facilities like a track or a football field. We had teams. We didn't have facilities. And so our team would jog to the local track and do their practice there and then jog back to the school. Well, one day, the track team was jogging back to the school, and there's a shootout at the corner at the intersection, and one of the guys gets shot. And he lived, and we just ended up giving him a new team name. He got shot in the butt, so now we call him Half a Butt. And I honestly cannot remember what his real name is, but all of these things, when I was living in that situation, just seemed very normal to me. I didn't realize until I got to college that students shouldn't get shot running to track practice, and actually shouldn't even have to leave campus to go to track practice. So I worked through all of that adversity, and I was able to move forward. Next slide. And I ended up going to Florida A&M University, which is in Tallahassee, Florida. I got a scholarship that was predicated on me remaining a physics major, and it included 4 summer internships at Lawrence Livermore National Labs. When I got to college, I'm sure some of you can relate. Oh, I was 1,000 miles from my mom, and I was partying. I was partying so much in what is definitely a college party town that I almost failed freshman physics, which would have meant that I would have lost a scholarship. Oh, it was like this whole mess because I was not focused on the things that were really important. I was focused on fitting in and socializing. And so I had my scholarship coordinator was like, if you can't pull this up, you are going to lose your scholarship. So I was able to refocus, pull myself together, and I ended up graduating with honors. So next slide. When I finished at FAMU, I applied to a bunch of grad schools, and my advisors there said, you should go to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a good school. We know people at Vanderbilt. We can look out for you at Vanderbilt. I said, nah, I'm going to Brown. It's Ivy League. It's highly ranked. I want to go to Ivy League. So I went to Brown, which is in Providence, Rhode Island, and I found that academics wasn't the only challenge for me. It was a bit of a culture shock. I went from a school that was 90% African American, FAMU's and HBCU, to a school that was extremely diverse with people from all over the world. And also, it was really cold. I know you guys are in cold areas, but I live in Florida. So I remember one April 1st, I woke up and like the radio said, oh, there's 3 feet of snow outside. And I was thinking, it's April Fool's Day. That's a terrible joke. But when I looked out that window, lo and behold, there was 3 feet of snow outside. So I had to adapt to being able to work in situations where I wasn't really comfortable, and really just get out of my comfort zone. Now, here's the biggest challenge that I think I've faced in my life. The qualifying exam. So I took the qualifying exam, and I did not pass. And so I studied and I prepped and I took it at the next time it was offered, and I did not pass. And so I, was invited to leave the university because if you don't advance to candidacy, you got to go. But I was in a good lab and I had a great advisor, and he said to me, Jami, I think that you can still be a great scientist. So if you want to reapply to other graduate schools, I will write strong letters of recommendation for you. And I did exactly that. I went to the National Society of Black Physicists Conference I printed my resume on my best fancy paper, which is what we did back then. And I went to every recruitment table and I talked, openly and honestly about what had happened and why, I was looking for a new school. And when I got to the table for Johns Hopkins University, I saw a shocking thing. I saw happy graduate students. I mean, like giddy happy. And I was like, this is nuts. This is not what happens at Brown. At Brown, the undergrads are very happy and the grad students are kind of ho-hum. At Hopkins, the undergrads are all stressed out because 75% are pre-med, 25% are engineering, and the grad students were pretty happy. And so I applied there. I was fortunate enough to get in. And next slide. And so I was able to recover from not being able to pass those exams. When I got to Hopkins, I was fortunate to work with a great advisor, and my research was on spintronic materials of C-axis rare earth thin film. So these are materials that we hoped would be useful for magnetic RAM. So with this type of memory, what you have to do is retain the spin state of the electron. Like if you put your current through copper, it bounces around so much that it loses its spin state. So there's a bunch of materials that were theorized to be applicable. And so I did experiments to determine if these materials were applicable. And what I found out was that they were not. So this was kind of a blow to me because, a negative result is still a result, but it's not, ideal. So I did contribute and I learned something. I did years of research only to find out that these materials were not commercially viable. Can I have the next slide? So while I was at Hopkins, one of the things that I felt was this tremendous sense of isolation because I was the only Black woman, in the physics department, which is, pretty common because there's just not that many Black women with going to get PhDs in physics. So what I did was I started to keep track of all the Black women who I met at various conferences. I just wrote down their name, what university they were at, email address, and all of that. And so I kept it on a website, and eventually I developed it into a nonprofit, African American Women in Physics Incorporated, where we celebrate and support all people who are in physics, particularly if they want to, ally and work with us. But we want to help to make physics and STEM more welcoming and more diverse. And right now it says fewer than 100, but I think in 2021 we're going to cross that 100 physicist mark. So we're very excited about the future. We can go to the next slide. So through all those things that happened in undergrad and graduate school, no one told me at the time, but it turns out that I did a lot of firsts. I was the first alumna to graduate from Florida A&M and go on to continue to get a PhD in physics. I think my dog's trying to break in. I was the first African American woman to get a degree in physics at Brown. And I was the first African American woman to get a PhD in physics from Johns Hopkins University. People ask me often, oh, well, how did it feel knowing that you were going to be the first? And I say, I didn't know because no one tells you. No one thought about it. The only reason that I found out was because I was keeping track of all these Black women in physics, and I realized, well, none of them went to Hopkins. And so I asked, and they're like, no, I can't recall ever having a Black woman in physics here. And then with Brown, it was probably 15 years after I graduated before I realized that I was the first, because that was when another young woman got her bachelor's in physics. And the university did, a big press release. She was class president and all this other stuff. And they were like, oh, she's the first Black woman to get a bachelor's in physics from Brown. And I was like, this school's been here since 1764. Oh my gosh. So I'm glad to be the first. I don't want to be the last. And I tell people if something hasn't been done before, so what? Go ahead and do it. You can be the first. Can we go to the next slide? So we've covered resilience, and next I'm going to talk about success and what success means and how we define success. Can we go to the next slide? So I want you each to take a few moments and think about how you define success. And so for me, it's kind of, healthy, happy, to have a fulfilling job and friends and my needs are met. I think that's kind of like the baseline of success. But it turns out that some psychologists have actually studied this in some depth. So we're going to go through how success is defined and what the implications are when we're not feeling successful. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's good. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And essentially, these are all the needs that need to be met for us to feel successful. And we're going to go through them in a little bit of depth, but I just want to, start from the bottom. Physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Psychiatrist Alfred Adler believed that all humans have a basic need to belong and be accepted by a social group. And when our needs go unmet, we find unhealthy ways to get that acceptance. Um, and so I'll give some examples along the way of things that I've done. And you might see, some things that ring a bell for you as we go through. So let's explore. Can we have the next slide? When your needs are not met, we call that stress, right? So if you're not getting enough air, water, food, shelter, sleep, all of those things, you end up being very stressed out. And stress can have a significant effect on our health. For me, when I was in graduate school at Hopkins, I got shingles. And shingles is something that does not happen to 25-year-old people unless they're under a tremendous amount of stress. It happens to people 55 and up. And in fact, my best friend's mom had shingles when I had shingles. And she's like, how can you have shingles? You're only 20. Yeah. So when you're under a lot of stress, you can have physiological impacts. You can end up catching, bronchitis or pneumonia or all these other things that can happen to you. So we want to make sure that we're getting our needs met. We want to take time to rest and to eat healthy and to just prioritize. This is the foundation. So we want to make sure that it's not going to make the pyramid tumble in our needs. Next slide. So safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property. When I think of this, I think about when I failed that qualifying exam and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? If I have to stop here, I'm gonna have to go home and fry French fries or something. I had no plan other than completing this PhD. So it definitely shook my sense of, my safety needs were not being met because I did not know what I was gonna do next. When you face unexpected challenges and changes in life, it can be comforting and reassuring to kind of just stop and take inventory of what really matters versus what's just kind of fluff and filler. So if I had to leave grad school altogether, I was not actually going to have to fry French fries. I was just going to move back in with my mom and find a job and reevaluate life and just kind of take it slow. So I tend to be kind of fatalistic, all or nothing, but it's much healthier to try to stop and evaluate and think about, okay, what things can I control, what things can I not control? Next slide. Okay, love and belonging. This is friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. An example where I feel like this wasn't being met for me was that over partying my freshman year. I was I was from Pennsylvania in the middle of Florida. Half the school's from Miami, and I definitely did not feel like I fit in. Everyone was telling me that I talk too fast and that they called me a Yankee. I mean, it definitely is a cultural shift to move to the South. So I remember I had pictures of all my friends all over the walls and stuff, and trying to party to make up for that feeling of belonging. Also, when I had that sense of isolation at Hopkins and created, what came to be AAWIP, that was born from, just not feeling like I belonged all the time. So I have this tip here that you should focus on the relationships that really matter and surround yourself with your village of people who love you and support you. In mine, I have my academic friends, I have my patent office friends, I have my family, I have my squad, my girl squad, and my friends from, you know, when I was younger. And all of them serve different needs at different times. So try to remember to nurture your friendships and relationships. Um, at this time, you know, because we're going through COVID, one of the things that's happened for me is I've had a lot of superficial relationships that I let go of. And I found that to be very freeing for me and very, very healthy because sometimes, you know, especially with these social media sites, you can have 1,000 friends on there. And it's like, actually, I don't even know who that is. We're not even actually friends. So I try to remind people to uh, think about how significant a relationship is if it's impacting you significantly. Like if it's really having a making you keep keeps you up at night. Think about whether or not that's a relationship that's extremely significant or if it's a superficial one. Next slide. Esteem, self-esteem, respect, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. I feel like this one can be a double-edged sword, particularly when you're in graduate school, because outside of school, at least for me, I found that like my family and my friends were like, "Oh, wow, you're so smart. This is so amazing." But then in the lab, it was like, "Are you ever going to get this experiment to work?" So it can kind of feel, you know, it can be a roller coaster of emotion. Um, I think for me, places where in my past where my self-esteem was not being met was when I didn't know that I was, you know, any kind of particular special being first or anything like that. And I can tell you for sure that nobody at Hopkins treated me like I was going to be special, other than making sure that I got my work done. And now I'm like I toot my own horn. I do my own research on it, and I encourage others to do it. I get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from being able to help younger women to find their path so they're not, you know, recreating the wheel when they go through challenging situations. I encourage you to volunteer and to find creative ways to use your talents while you're moving into through the chapters in your life. Next slide. All right, self-actualization. Um, they said to think of this as the living your best life. Um, And let's see. I feel like I'm in this zone right now. I feel like I have the life that I dreamed of. It's probably even better than I dreamed of. I get to live in sunny Florida. I have a husband and a son and a job that I don't even have to physically go into. And I still have some achievable goals ahead. So once your basic needs are met, you can kind of think creatively to problem solve and move yourself into the space where you want to be in your future. We're going to go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, that's the success needs pyramid. And next, we're going to talk about tips to build our resilience. Next slide. Okay, so this one has a lot of information on it, but we're going to take it section by section so that we can kind of do a little bit of a deep dive here. Next slide. First, we're going to start with emotional wellness. So your social connections, this is your village, your squad. You want to make sure that you have a social network, a support network to fall back on. And networking, especially at a conference like this one, it can be a great way to find people that you can call on when problems or situations arise. One of the things that we do with AAWIP is we have a private Facebook group, and what we find that, well, what I love to see is when someone who's in California and someone who's in Massachusetts, they're able to work together on a problem. Like one of the students said, "Oh, you know, I don't want to do this quantum homework." And then someone else said, "Listen, do the quantum homework, because if not, you'll have to repeat the class. It happened to me." And they're just like, "Wow, you know, okay, I'll do the homework." And then someone else said, "Well, which textbook are you using?" And they were able to kind of work together and share notes. So having those types of networks can be really key to, particularly to reducing any kind of sense of isolation. I hope that no one is sitting in their apartment or their lab by themselves without, you know, at least reaching out to someone else on the computer or on the telephone so that you can have those kinds of social connections. For mindfulness, I do yoga and I do meditation, and I encourage it. And I think it really helps me to relax and to just slow my mind down. Um, I have a gratitude practice. I have a gratitude jar where every day, or not every day, every week, I try to write something on a slip of paper that I'm grateful for. And I put it in the jar. And I encourage my son to do this too. Of course, he always writes Minecraft, but we're working on it. And or even if you just, stop and think about the things that you're grateful for. Sometimes it's really simple stuff for me. I had ankle surgery a few years ago, and so now, like every day, I'm like, I stop and think, wow, I'm walking. I'm so grateful for having strong ankles, or if I'm doing yoga, or if I'm at Zumba class, I'm just really happy that I can do small things that I used to take for granted. And then the fourth one here is to have a positive mindset. And I'm a natural optimist. I know everyone's not, always optimistic, but I do want to encourage you to look on the bright side. Um, I have a couple Jamiisms that I'm going to put in at the end, but I try to say, like, especially if it's something that I don't want to do, like laundry. I say, no, not laundry, making dinner for the family. I'm like, I gotta make dinner. See, that's kind of down in the dumps. A bright side way to say it is, I get to make dinner for my family. I'm fortunate that I have the time and the energy and the groceries and all those things, and I get to do this. So, get to versus have to is a way that I try to reframe it. And one of my old mentors used to say, fake it till you make it. And I do believe that works because even though I still don't love to do it when I say it that way, it makes me feel better about it. And so I think that saying it kind of drives the emotion behind it. So, um, I'd say give that a shot. Also, I hope that you work on part of having a positive mindset is giving people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes we have conversations, particularly in text messages, and because they lack context cues, we can get upset about something or become angry with someone or misinterpret what their intention is. So part of having a positive mindset is just to try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Pick up the phone and call. Hey, maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe there's a typo or something in there. And so these are the four things under emotional wellness to help build resilience. Next slide. Okay, so next we have under physical wellness. I talked already about how I do yoga. I'm also a former Zumba instructor. I love Zumba. And I just ordered a pair of roller skates. So I'm looking for my neighborhood resurfaced the streets. And I was like, I'm getting some roller skates. They can't stop me. So try to find whatever it is that you enjoy doing to get some exercise and some movement to keep our bodies healthy. Make sure that you're getting at least 8 hours of sleep, at least 7. Get enough sleep so that you are, get resting your body and your mind so that you can face whatever challenges are coming towards you. Get enough water. I like to you do infused water, like with mint and cucumber and strawberries and stuff, just to give it a little kick. And I find that it helps me to actually drink more. And of course, last one is eat well. So you want to make sure that you're um, fueling your body with healthy foods so that your brain is functioning optimally. Make sure that you're drinking healthy drinks, or if you're having, alcoholic drinks, do it in moderation. Um, Next slide. Okay, and that last we have mental wellness. Self-care, this is my favorite. I love practicing self-care. I hope that you can find time at least once a week to just treat yourself well, to be kind to yourself. For me, it's bubble baths. I like the bath bombs from Lush. You've probably seen them in the airport. It's a very smelly store. I love those. And when I close that door, I know my husband knows, my son knows that is mommy's time. Do not come in. She is gonna be in there a while. And I just, I do the face mask and all that stuff. And it's just some time to be good to myself. Another part of self-care is speaking kindly to yourself. Sometimes we can get caught up in negative self talk, like, oh, why did I do that? It's so stupid, And when I find myself being frustrated with myself, one of the things I like to do is to talk to myself as if I were talking to a friend. Because if my friend came to me with this situation and said, oh, I had this catastrophe in the lab and I broke this piece of equipment and oh, I'm just, I can't believe I'm so boneheaded. I would not say, yeah, you're a bonehead. I would actually say, listen, don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. So I try to treat myself as kindly as I would treat my friends and to cut down on negative self-talk. Self-care also includes spirituality. If you have a spiritual practice or if you believe in something higher than yourself, then that also comes under self-care. And last thing I would say under self-care is to accept errors and move on because we can't stay, beating ourselves up over the past. If something has happened, we accept it, we learn from it, and then we try to move forward. Under response control, this section is so that you can control how you respond. So for example, if we are upset about something, we don't always have to show it immediately. Or if we're having, some kind of an emotional response to something, we don't have to let everyone else know how we're feeling about it. We can choose who gets to know how we're feeling about something. So if there is, a catastrophe in the lab and you feel like you might need to shed a few tears, don't do it in the lab. Go to a private space or ladies' room or somewhere and feel the emotions and let it out, and then pull yourself together and then go back into the lab or the other space. And often that is will help you to do better longer down the line because you won't have people who remember when you cried in the lab or something like that. But yeah, try to work on controlling your response. Managing your workload. This is true for work and for home. I'm going back to laundry. I don't love to do it, but I know that if I don't do it, then it will continue to pile up. It doesn't just go away. So make sure that you're managing the tasks that you have to do. And that goes for, your classwork and your work in the lab as well. Try to make it so that you're not overwhelmed at the last minute. And then lastly is just to be open to change because change is inevitable. It is the one constant in the world. It's entropy. We need to be flexible enough to sway with it so that we don't break. My next slide. All right, and so here we've got just my last minute strategies, and I want you to remember to use what you've got. You've got a sense of humor, you've got a little optimism, spirituality, creativity. I find that for creativity, one of the things I do is I used to paint, and then I stopped painting because it got kind of messy. Then I quilted for a while, and now I'm doing crochet. And so I make baby blankets all the time, even though it's 90 degrees down here most of the time. But I find that just, the actions of creating things helps me to feel more calm. And I talked about the 2 versus 4, like I have to do it versus, no. 2 versus 4 is thinking about reframing when things happen to you as opposed to saying that it's happening for me. So an example of that would be saying, like when I didn't pass those exams, wow, this is so unfair. I can't believe this happened to me. A different way of thinking about it is, well, this has happened. It must be for a reason. So I'm going to learn from it and do something else. The dog. I shouldn't let him in. No. So 2 versus 4 is making sure that it's trying to reframe things in a more positive light, that it's happened for a reason and it's happened, for a good reason. Have to versus get to is I have to go do the laundry as opposed to I get to do the laundry. There's people who don't even have clothes or who don't have money for detergent, that kind of stuff. And then one of my favorite sayings, my Jamiism is, done is better than perfect. And that is going to be true all life long. I used to have a really bad perfectionism streak, and now I just recite to myself over and over, done is better than perfect, because we have deadlines, and realistically, getting things perfect just takes too long. We do not always have the time to make things perfect. That's true with examining patent applications, and that's true when I'm crocheting a baby blanket. If I made a mistake 5 rows back, I just made a mistake. It's going to be in there. Let's call it art because I have to get it done. I don't need it to be perfect. Okay, so let's go on to our next slide. I think that I had intended to pop this slide out, but I can run through it really quick. Sometimes it seems that we overestimate the negatives and we underemphasize the positives. So it can be very helpful to just stop and do just a critical evaluation. Like, okay, am I really the worst student in the class? Or, am I in the middle, because I'm telling myself, oh, I'm just terrible at this. I'm the worst student in the class. Everyone knows it, that kind of stuff. Try to be, just take a critical look at it and make sure that you're not overemphasizing the negatives. We also often don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we've done. It's taken me a lot of years to be able to, sit here confidently and say, my story to you guys. But there was definitely a time where I wouldn't have told anyone about, the high school I went to and the shape that it was in. And, I would have thought that they would judge me for it. But now I just kind of, look at it as something that I've overcome, and it helps me to feel stronger. And I don't want to read the slides to you guys, so I'm just gonna keep going past this one. Can we have the next slide? So these are particularly difficult times. These are uniquely difficult times. None of your professors have had to take entire courses online. They also have never had to teach them online, most of them. So these, I won't be able to tell my son, oh, I had it harder than you, because he's doing all his schooling online. He's got it harder than me. So we've got all of these changes. We've got changes in our routine. Some of us are quarantined. There's isolation and stress, fear, and uncertainty. And so I want to give just a few specific coping strategies for this COVID-19 time. Can we have the next slide? Avoid information overload, take recommended precautions, remember to connect with your family and friends. I'm planning a Zoom party for my friends. I haven't seen my friends in a long time. We talk, we text, we Facebook, but I haven't actually seen their faces. So I'm gonna plan a little party and mail out bingo cards or something. I don't know. There's people who do these things and they've got all kinds of ideas out there. So connect with your friends and family. Consume news and social media judiciously. Some people say just turn the screen off. I don't say that because I can't, I'm addicted to the screens, but consume them judiciously and make sure that if you're watching something and it's upsetting you, take a break. Because if you were on vacation in Bora Bora, you would not be looking at this stuff and the world would still keep spinning and everything would be okay when you got home. So it is okay to take a week off, a day off, a month off of the social media and the news. Trust me, if something big is happening, you're still going to find out. Form new habits. So for me, I used to go to the gym all the time for Zumba and, weight training classes. And now I have to do it all at home. And so I'm fortunate that we had a spare bedroom. And so I've turned that into my little workout room, and I keep my yoga mat out, and I took the TV off the wall and put it on the floor so it can be closer to me. And instead of working out in the evenings, now I work out in the mornings. And I just try to, find new ways to do the things that used to bring me joy. And also try to keep daily routines. It's helpful, particularly I know some people may be stressed or depressed. Get out of bed, get dressed, take a shower, switch the order, and have a routine. Oh, this is the time I go for a walk, this is the time I have lunch, that kind of stuff. Or even if it's a weekly routine, on Tuesdays I call my mom, on Thursdays I go to the gym, well, something like that. So try to think of routines. Okay, we're gonna go on to the next slide. I want you to know that you already are resilient. These are all techniques to help you strengthen your resilience and to help you to be even more resilient. I hope that you know that you absolutely can achieve your goals. We all encounter difficulties and bumps in the road, but you can bounce off of them. And no matter how tough a situation can be, you can make it through. Just don't give up. Just keep working hard and utilize all of your resources, your networks, your professors, your friends, because each of you has a really special talent out there and the world actually needs your contributions. So that is all that I have on resilience. Hannah, how much time do I have left?
So you have 10 more minutes and then we'll move to the Q&A.
Okay. Awesome. So let's talk intellectual property. First, I have to give you my legal disclaimer. This basically just says I'm going to talk about things that are all publicly available. I am not representing the Patent Office or the US government. I'm not offering you a patent. Don't sue me. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So the main patent office is located in Alexandria, Virginia, and we have 4 satellite offices in Dallas, Denver, Detroit, and San Jose. We have over 8,000 examiners, and I'll just go through them. The number of months to first action is the amount of time it takes before you get a first letter back from the patent office when you apply for a patent. So if you apply for a patent, you're not going to hear from us for anywhere from 1 year to 2, even 3. And usually it takes about 2 years for the entire patent application process to complete. So that's the pendency. We had a huge backlog of 600,000 cases, but we also have, 600,000 new cases, 500,000 unexamined backlog. So they like to say, well, it's job security because even though we're constantly examining, we also still have this backlog. If we close the doors tomorrow, we'd all still work for 4 years. So I'd rather just get the backlog knocked down, but I do remember a time where it was over 800,000. So we are making some progress. We're going to go to the next slide. I've mentioned before that I'm a teleworker. Well, now everybody is teleworking, but I was doing it before it was COVID cool. I've been teleworking for about 10 years. Most of our examiners telework, so the shift was not as disruptive for us at all. Most of our examiners who do telework full-time live in Florida, outside of the DC area. Most of them live in Florida. I think Texas is number 2. And that's probably because Texas and Florida don't have state tax. We like to say that it helps to save the environment because we're not driving on the roads and all that good stuff. But I think that it's one of the main benefits that the office offers because it is a federal government. So they're not going to be able to offer big bags of money, but they offer work-life benefits. So like the transition going from being at Hopkins and then coming to the patent office, it was day and night because at Hopkins, I was expected to know everything. I was expected to have the answers at all times. And I was expected to work 12 to 16 hours a day. Whereas at the patent office, I'm expected to work 8 hours a day. And I was like, what? That's amazing. When I remember I was in training and my supervisor said, listen, Jamie, it's time to go to happy hour. And I was like, oh, I'm going to stay late. I'm going to finish up this case, try to get ahead. And he came to my desk and he put his books on and said, no, you must leave. It's against our collective bargaining agreement for you to work overtime. You can't, you gotta leave. Go to happy hour. And I was like, they're forcing me out at 4:45. I'm so confused. It was like detoxing from the academic environment. So I like my job. I'll tell you, I came to the patent office because my advisor said, hey, I'm not gonna let you schedule your defense until you have a job. And there were 4 of us in the lab who were in our 7th and 8th years. I was like, well, I got to get a job. And this was the very first job I applied for and got. And it had 8 months of paid training. I was like, cool, I'll do this until my postdoc applications come back. And then I'll figure out what I want to do with my life. But actually, it's turned out to be the perfect job for me. I like that it has, there's always new information that I'm learning all the time. I know that the work that I'm doing is impactful and it has meaning to people. And yeah, it has fair compensation and that work-life benefit. Next slide. Okay, so intellectual property is basically 4 things. It includes patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. And we're going to zip through them. Next slide. And by the end of this, you'll be an expert. The trademark is just a brand name or a logo. It's also, it can be like that particular shade of orange for the Home Depot or the brown of UPS. All of those are also trademarks. And you can see here, I'm sure you can all tell all of these items. I need to update these slides. Toys R Us doesn't exist anymore, so I gotta, I gotta come into modern times. The next slide. Copyrights cover songs, movies, sculptures, and books. Those are filed with the US Copyright Office, not with the Patent Office. Next. Trade secret is a secret. You don't file it anywhere. You lock it in a safe. So the recipe for Coca-Cola and the 11 herbs and spices, all of those are locked in a safe at corporate somewhere. and they keep those things confidential. Next slide. So in the news recently, we had a lot of on intellectual property for the NFL. There was a particular football team in Washington that had a name that was a slur. And so we revoked their trademark. And it turns out that some fan filed for every trademark for all the particular names that they might choose as an alternate. So they took the Red Tails and the Red Wolves and the Generals and they have like 50 different trademarks because the newspaper did a poll like, oh, what should we rename the team? And then this guy went and got all of the trademarks. So I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm not at all upset that they don't have a logo this year. Next slide. But really, when we think of intellectual property, we're thinking of a patent. I'm sure everybody here has peeked in on this show at least once. And what's their favorite question is, do you have a patent? Is it defensible? Next slide. Patents are everywhere. So even in a cup of coffee, there's likely 3 patents. There's a patent for the cup. They have the fuzzy cups that are insulating to keep your hands from burning. The sleeves, some sleeves have lines, some sleeves have hexagons. And then the lids. Starbucks debuted a new lid because they got rid of straws for their iced coffee, and that's patented. Some lids have the little flap that pops out. Each of those probably has a patent. A patent allows the inventor to prevent others from making or doing their invention for a limited amount of time. Next slide. The 3 types of patents are design, utility, and plant. And really, when we think of patents, we're thinking of utility patents. A design patent is just the way the thing looks, and plant patents are for new types of plants, like those Honeycrisp apples that are so expensive but so delicious. Next slide. Anyone can patent their invention. This is a 10-year-old from Florida who invented the puff and fluff, where the dog steps in and she puts the hairdryer in the back, and it helps to get her dog dry without getting her all wet. And I believe that is still being made and for sale. Next slide. My most famous patent, I didn't look very famous when it came across my desk. It was from a company called LuxView, and it was for an LED that they put on the micropost so that it could wiggle. And I was like, okay, I don't know why you want to do that. I did the search, I couldn't find it. They got a patent, and then they got bought by Apple, and Apple now puts those into their new Apple Watches. Next slide. Because we're running out of time, I'm actually going to skip this slide. If you have an invention, don't tell anyone about your invention. Check with your university because they may have rights to your invention, even if it's not the work that you're doing for them. Sometimes when we're signing all those papers on the first day, we sign away our rights. And Google Patents is an excellent resource, as well as uspto.gov. Next slide. We're going to skip this one too. Okay, here's the one. If you didn't know, the Patent Office only hires engineers and scientists to be patent examiners, because you can teach an engineer the law, but it's much harder to teach a lawyer quantum physics. So anyone with a bachelor's in physics, math, engineering, chemistry, yada, yada. And I've put the salaries all the way here at the bottom. Law firms hire and the Patent Office hires. And of course, the law firms are paying double what the Patent Office doubles. But the Patent Office is still a great place to work. Both will pay for you to go to law school if you choose to. I think, I didn't know, but I'd like to share, the law school entrance exam is just a logic test. It even has a section called logic games. So usually people in STEM do pretty well at it. So it's an option for each of you if you ever consider leaving your engineering field and you want to do something a little different. All right, and that, if you go to the next one, it's just a recap of my resilience slide. And I will take questions. If you go to that next slide, it has my website in case people want to reach out to me. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and also sharing a little bit about patents. I know I didn't know a lot about what your job entails, so it was cool to hear about that. Okay, let me open. So we have 10 minutes for questions, and you can either ask questions in the chat or you can do the raise your hand feature, and I'll see that you raised your hand, and then you can actually unmute yourself and ask the question. But I'll move to the chat. Okay, so we have one question from Kathleen. She's wondering how can you stay resilient after dealing with failure after failure?
It can be hard, but I think the thing to do is to look forward to the future and be optimistic about the future. I like to think that the trials that we go through are given to us so that we can learn a lesson from them. And sometimes if we don't get the lesson, then we have to repeat it over and over again. I had a friend who was working at this job, and then he took on a second job, and then he got fired from both jobs. And then like we fell out, and a couple years later, we were friends again, and he was working at a job, and he took a second job, and he got fired from both jobs. I said, you did this already. You did not get the lesson. So it can be challenging. I just like to remind myself of, there's something better coming ahead. When something hard is happening, that it's going to get better. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. So this is from Suzanne. She says, it is inspiring to hear that you faced obstacles throughout your graduate studies, but they didn't stop you from persisting and thriving. Many students get their PhD while they're still in their 20s, but there is a higher social pressure when you're in your 30s as a full-time grad student, which requires even more resilience to go through with your studies. Scroll down. Do you have any additional tips to deal with this pressure, inner and outer, of joining the workforce ASAP?
Yes, I think that we're scientists, so it's important to have the data. And the truth is that if you finish your PhD and you're trying to be an academic, you then have to do a postdoc. And in some fields, you have to do 2 postdocs or 3 postdocs in biophysics. So you can point out to external pressures, hey, this is absolutely typical. This is what is expected, and I'm on the right path. As for internal pressure, it can be really tough because, you've also got the biological clock, which may be ticking loudly for some. And I finished graduate school. I think I was 31 when I finally finished. I spent 10 years between being at Brown and being at Hopkins. And so, yeah, I found that just surrounding myself with other people who were in that struggle and who understood it was really helpful to me. I have a squad of friends who, we all started around the same time. Some finished in 5 years, some, did 3 postdocs, some got a job right away. And it's going to be different for everybody. So just remind yourself, you're in the mean. What you're doing is statistically on time, and make sure that you're making the choices that are right for you, not what's right for someone else, for your mom or whoever else.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? You can raise your hand. You can also add it to the chat and I can read it aloud for you. Otherwise, I will go ahead and ask a question. So I think like your personal story was really cool to hear, and just like the idea that you were first in a lot, even though you didn't realize it at the time. What kind of mentorship did you have, like going through all of those different steps? Because I think like it would have been really easy to quit during all of those steps. So like what kept you motivated, and like who was kind of behind you during that process?
Well, my number one is my mom, who is my, constant cheerleader, who she definitely helped me to continue on when I felt like I might want to quit. I also had mentors. I'm still in contact with my high school counselor who just adored me. I also, like when I went to FAMU, all of those professors, when they sent me out into the big bad world, they still stayed in contact and, kind of looked out for me and checked in on me. When I had trouble with those exams, one of them sent me his old practice exams from UCLA from 20 years ago. And so I'm still in contact with them too. When I got to Hopkins, I had a lot more student support. So it found the other students who I really got along with the best weren't in STEM. But at Hopkins, they were. And so if I said, hey, I've been in the lab for 6 days, I haven't seen sunlight, and they say, oh yeah, me too, let's go get some coffee, we need some vitamin D. And so it was kind of more self-mentoring. But then as I got to meet so many of the women through AAWIP, now I have like a huge vault of, well, huge, I have a huge vault of people who I can call on when I have different situations and that come up that I haven't seen before.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question in the chat. So Tangela is asking, how did you balance your work and family life?
Well, for me, I basically put off having a family. I didn't expect that I would have a family, and it wasn't on my radar. So it's a funny story. I met my husband actually in 1992 when I first got to college. We were on the same scholarship, and I was a freshman. He was a sophomore, and we never dated in college. He never asked me out, even though he liked me, but he didn't ask me out. And so, we went our separate ways. I married somebody else, he married somebody else, got divorced, and then he's in DC. He's like, oh, let's go out for coffee. Look me up on Facebook. Boom. 8 years later, married with a kid. So the way now that I balance work life and family is, especially with everyone being home, during COVID, I just had to reprioritize. And I'm fortunate that our job is giving extra time off for people who are home, whose children are learning from home, because otherwise I probably would have exhausted all of my leave. Because even now, like I can hear him on the other side of the door waiting to get in. So during COVID, it's much harder because I have to put certain needs of the family before my work. But when we're not in a COVID time, it's easier because I have all of these extra resources with camp and school and extended day. My mom used to come down like 1 week a month, and that stopped during COVID. And we would plan our vacations and stuff around that. So yeah, it can be done. It really depends on the job. One of the best, I took out a slide on this, but the best part of the patent office is the flexibility, because as long as I get 80 hours done in 2 weeks, they don't care what time I work. And I do my best work between like 2 and 8 in the evening. I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to get much done at 8 a.m. And they're happy with that. I also like that my work isn't dependent on somebody else. I'm not waiting for them to finish and nobody's like, come on, I need your work product. I get to work at my own pace. So that helps a lot, because if I need to take off and go talk to my third graders class, I can do that. And then I can make up the time another day. So having that flexibility really helps.
Okay, one question from Nancy Martin. Do you need to go to law school to be a patent examiner?
No, absolutely not. In fact, all you need is a bachelor's degree. So I could have come to the patent office back when I felt those exams, but I didn't know. I thought I'd be frying French fries. You don't need one, but you can get one and it will help your career trajectory. So what a lot of people do is they come to the patent office, they let the patent office pay for their law degree. And I mean, they pay for the tuition, and then you agree not to leave for X number of months based on how many credits they pay for. So you agree to stay with the knowledge that you've learned. But then you can go to a law firm and make $500 an hour. So the benefit of getting the law degree is if you want to go off to another place. Also, every university has a tech transfer office that has somebody who has a STEM degree and a law degree, or a whole office full, who are looking at the technologies that you guys are working on and whether or not they can file patents. So, and all the big companies, everybody's got a patent, a patent litigation part inside. So that's where having a law degree would give you so many extra options.
Okay, I think this will probably be the last question. So a question from the chat, Ji Young Kim is asking, are there many internationals in a patent office, or is the job opportunity mostly limited to citizens?
So it's yes and no. Yes, the job at the US Patent Office is limited to citizens, but I would say more than half of the examiners are first generation immigrants. So we have a lot of an international feel, but yeah, but the law firms are not limited. In fact, they are really looking for people who might be able to speak Korean or Japanese or Chinese to help them prepare these applications. Half of our applications come from China and Japan. And so I literally am scrolling through Japanese and using the machine translator all the time. And so, yeah, there's still a lot of opportunity, even if you're not a citizen.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That was the last question, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. And I will also remove your spotlight. Okay, so yeah, if everyone would join me in virtually thanking Jami for her amazing talk, we will then move on to our closing address. And Justine Paul, our gradSWE director at Illinois, will be giving this closing address.
Yes, hi. So thank you again, Jami, for closing out the conference with such an inspirational talk. And for those who I did not get a chance to meet today, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I am a third-year PhD student in material science and engineering here at the University of Illinois, and this year's gradSWE director. I just want to take a moment, though, to thank all of the weSTEM speakers for taking the time out of their day to share their experiences and knowledge with us. You all have left each and every one of us feeling empowered and confident about our futures in STEM. And I don't know about you, but I'm certainly feeling energized to go out and conquer the world. So thank you all for taking the time again to share these experiences with us. And to conclude the evening, I'd also like to again acknowledge and thank the weSTEM committee members and the gradSWE volunteers. The success of the weSTEM 2021 conference is truly due to this talented group of gradSWE members. I'm so grateful for their hard work, dedication, and their friendship. And I would also like to give a special thanks to this year's weSTEM director, Hannah Lohman. She tackled converting this conference to a virtual platform head on, and she did absolutely a fantastic job. So thank you, Hannah. We are all very appreciative of the work you put into hosting this conference, and your hard work has truly paid off. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors again. Their generous contributions make this conference possible. gradSWE and weSTEM have received much support from the entities across the University of Illinois, as well as from corporate sponsors. Exponent, Caterpillar, and Ramble, we are extremely thankful for your support, and a huge thank you to all of your employees who attended today's conference to network with our attendees. And last but not least, a huge thank you to all of the attendees for helping make weSTEM 2021 such a tremendous success. Even though we couldn't meet in person this year, we are so grateful for all the support gradSWE of Illinois received. We hope to see you, and hopefully in person, next year. So finally, I'm going to leave you all with a quote from Toni Morrison that I feel embodies the themes of the weSTEM conference and is a quote that inspires me, and I hope it will inspire all of you. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. And with that, this concludes the formal events of the conference, but please feel free to stay on the GatherTown platform to continue networking with one another. Thanks again for attending today.
Justine, do you mind taking a quick picture before everyone leaves?
Yeah, we can do that. I think I'll be able to get most of us on the same screen, so.
Okay, great.
Let me. Well, I can just like pan back and forth. So I will count down. For those who feel comfortable, please unmute your video. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to pan to the next one because we all don't fit on the same screen. So one more time, everyone smile in case I don't know who's on what screen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I think things changed. We'll figure it out. We got pictures. I wish we could all fit on the same one, but it looked like people were leaving in the middle of it. So thank you all again. Feel free to head back to the GatherTown platform. Also, feel free to just kind of unplug and unwind. I know we've all probably have Zoom fatigue. So again, thank you though for everyone who put a lot of work into making this event possible.